Good afternoon. My name is Neil Robinson, a graduate student at ISI program at Bellevue University. Today we're looking at the way forward with U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. Let me just jump right into it here, saying over the past 8 years, 10 years or so, we've been at war in Afghanistan and Iraq. And in the former administration, the Bush administration, they looked at a policy where they use military to really dictate how they'll drive the policy. In the current administration, the Obama administration, they're more geared towards a policy that looks at how to use diplomacy to shape the policies in the Middle East. Many people would look at this and say, well, a military stand, you have a lot of the neocons that will say that a military stand would be a better stance or a stronger country. The country that uses military might would get more done. That's not necessarily true. Matter of fact, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. Probably using military so that you isolate countries from participating or want to have a dialogue with you if you use the military to kind of to help shape the kind of policy you want, whether it be in the Middle East or elsewhere. I think there's a combination of policy and having a laissez-faire kind of policy like the Obama administration, we just figure we're not going to do anything in the Middle East and everything will just solve itself. It's not also the proper policy. If you look at the problem with Gaza and the Palestinian and the Israelis, it's been going on for years, but you have to be engaged in a situation like that. You have to go in and then let Israel know what your, based on your norms and principle as to guide them to shape the policy. Israel's not going to just get up and say, hey, this is what we want and this is what we're going to do to abide by what America wants us to do. You have the Palestinian also, you have to engage with Hamas. We can't say this isolate and demonize Hamas and say, well, Hamas, listen, we're not going to talk to you, you're a terrorist organization, we don't talk to terrorists, which in fact is not true. When we have engaged with different groups that we consider to be hostile or not in the line with what we want to deal with, say for instance the Taliban, and we engaged them to try to incorporate them in the government in Afghanistan. We also did it when we went to Iraq, not initially, but we started realizing that we have to have a more inclusive part of the people that have played a direct role in the everyday governance of the country. We went to Iraq, we had the Baptists. Before we isolated, we realized that this country, if you isolate people, especially when we talk about the Middle East, we're talking about a political and sectarian kind of politics. We talk about religion is really incorporated in it, and the politics is also incorporated. And then we talk about the different sects within the other problem. You find, I mean, you go to Palestine, for example. You have on the West Bank and on the Gaza and the Gaza Strip, you have different ideology of what's supposed to take place. What's best for each person. You realize people tell you every day that what's best for them is not what's best for the person on this side of the street. So we have to be really careful when we kind of advocate for military use or military intervention. I mean, we saw it in Syria, where we thought that if we went in and supported the different the pro-Syrian rebel movement to go in and overthrow Assad, we feel more or less we give some assistance and bomb Assad like we did in Libya with Gaddafi. This will help bring a rise to people coming in and taking over for the good of the country or share our interests. But again, we see that it was a faulty idea. We're now the same faction of one of the faction within Syria is now spread across ISIS, the ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq is spreading across Iraq, and is a threat to pretty much everyone in the Middle East as far as destabilizing the Middle East, because they want to isolate and break away the borders that we're commonly used to, and just incorporate everything without any borders now between Syria, Jordan. It's a situation that has developed from a previous situation where military intervention was used to overthrow Saddam Hussein, destabilize that country. ISO now is coming in because the new government is not able to stand up or to fight to keep ISO back, so they advance in on Iraq, and this could be very, very problematic for the Middle East, because again we look at countries just like Libya, who set up a new government recently. Libya could even they were unable to create a permanent at this point a permanent place to meet. They can even meet in their permanent body of location. They had to meet in a hotel or something like that. But again, this is another prime example of what happens when countries are not stable, because there's no central government to rule anything. We have a government, a ruler general in Libya who's actually the one in charge. So so it's very difficult to say on one hand when we're shaping policy and say, policy for the Middle East, this will work best, this will work best. No, what will work best is when you look at each country individually and say, this will work in Iraq, this will work in Afghanistan, this is a policy we need to have towards Iran. Incorporate all these countries, try to create a policy and shape the policy to hopefully fit everyone. A one size fit all policy will not work in the Middle East. I mean, if the media, you see it every day on print and digital media, you see where over and over again you see we're talking about stuff in Yemen, in Jordan. It just won't fit, and then but they do their link, but their policies for each individual countries, you have to shape the policy differently. I mean, they're linked as far as what the problem is in the Middle East. I mean, going back to Palestine again, we see where the influx of refugee in Jordan is creating the instability in Jordan. Jordan government on its own is also a threat to destabilize and create a problem. And this will be problematic to America also in foreign American interest, because Jordan is one of our allies in the Middle East. It's just as Egypt is one of our allies in the Middle East. We saw what happened in Egypt, where we want democracy. Our foreign policy is to push for democracy in the Middle East. Democracy, and many may disagree with what I'm about to say, but democracy does not work for everyone. America still is a fragile country when it comes to democracy, because democracy is something where people, the populace have to be educated to understand democracy. Most of these countries in the Middle East, we're talking about the very high literacy rating. People are not really informed, so you can't really bring an idea to a country that the populace is not ready for. They're not, and this is what policymakers have to really ask themselves. Do you want to give something to a country? It's like giving a toddler a toy that's designed for a 5-year-old, and they expect the toddler supposed to figure it out and use it. And this is the problem we have in the Middle East. When people not looking at the people who you're giving or pushing these ideas on, and the government who you wanted to conform to, yes, democracy will work in your country. No, side is a slow process. I mean, the West, we went through that process. It's a very, very slow process, and people might have to open up and understand what is democracy all about. Few people protesting and in front of Western media say, yeah, we're the few. No, they're not. They are the few. They're not the majority, as far as to push democracy in the Middle East. And I think we should stop. In my opinion, I think we should stop the idea of building a foreign policy on the guise or the block, or the foundation of the foreign policy is solely to push democracy and our agenda. We also have to look at their agenda and what's in their interest, because if we look at our interest, we'll miss the whole we'll still go back around and have the same problem. We're having a problem now in Israel and Palestine. We're looking at our interest. What's American interest? Let's get this done. And because we're afraid to speak up and say what needs to be done in Israel, our interest is going by the wayside. Is going to create a bigger problem. We're creating a new wave of terrorists to come in the generation that comes. So we're just perpetrating the cycle over and over and over again. And I want to say to my colleagues and people in the intelligence community and people who are policymakers and policy advisors, when you advise someone, when you give your opinion on something, and it's up to them to implement it, but you have to look at them to give them a way in, a way out, and why you think this is the way to go in, and this is not the way to go in, because the exit is going to look like this. And this would be a perfect example. If we are all students of history, we look at Iraq, and I think for me and most people, Iraq is a learning. It is the learning lesson of what not to do and how not to do it, because you think you could prop up a government, go and drop a couple of bombs and install a government, say, okay, this is your country, you run it, we're going to leave, and you take care of it on your own. But and at the same time, we're telling them, we can't be friends with your neighbors, we don't want you to be close associate with the country that we're at odds with because of this and because of that. Again, we have to really dig deep and look. As I said, I mean, American administration, as far as its foreign policy, have to look deep and see if they want a short-term foreign policy or long-term or broader foreign policy that covers different issues within the Middle East to fix different problems. Not a one-size-fits-all kind of problem. And with that, I'd like to say this, just again, let's look at the real problem and fix each problem which will benefit each country, and not fix the problem that will benefit the entire Middle East, because that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. All right, with that, I would like to say thank you for listening. Thanks.